ambition. "Arms up," the man said. A smile touched my lips, and I did as I was told. I knew that I'd fucked up. There was no denying it. This meeting was a formality, not a death sentence. I lifted my arms lightly above my head. My suit coat hung along my shoulders like torn-back sails. The man patted me down, unholstered my gun, and tucked it along the back of his waistband, and I looked at him with a questioning glance. The nerve of this one, I thought, but remained silent, smelling the wafting cigar smoke pouring out of Father's office. "You'll get it back when business is concluded. This your only piece?" he asked, sizing me up. I nodded and tucked in my shirt along the waist again, shimmied my pants into a better position. The man stood aside, gesturing for me to enter. My hand wrapped around the brass doorknob, and the thick wood creaked inward, and all at once the smell of Father's cigars hit me harder than a ton of bricks. My eyes broadened. Making my way inside through the haze reminded me of the night we went down to the docks to pitch the body of Lenny Chesnetter over into the dark water. "Not me," Lenny's voice echoed in my mind. "I didn't do nothin'. I swear it." "Nothin', I tell ya. The gunshot always sounds louder when it isn't you pulling the trigger." I entered the lavish office, my father sitting behind his desk like an old king at his throne. And to the chair along the right of the desk, my brother, turning his head to look at me. Even for all the years since the day of his automobile accident, I can never get used to the sight of that scar. A jagged line running along the left temple toward the middle of the cheek. "Have a seat," Father said. I listened to my shoes clacking across the hardwood, listening to the sounds of the door shutting behind me, but didn't have to look back to know that the man outside had done it. Other scents were mingling in the air, Father's cologne, as well as my brother's. One of the housekeepers had set up a bouquet in this dark room, as if it had seemed to mask the constantly wafting cigar smoke drifting up toward the ceiling. It didn't. I found the open chair to my father's right diagonal from his spot behind the desk, and took the wide way around, pulling the chair back so that the three of us now sat almost in a perfect triangle. I did this because whatever bad water had been spilled between my brother and me, I wasn't in a fighting mood. Maybe it was the Irish in me, some instinctual thing to wanna fuck strange women and fight all the goddamn time. My brother scoffed at this, gusting his air, and flapped his coat back to the center of his torso over the velvet blue vest beneath. A single gold chain clipped to one of the buttonholes. The same pocket watch I gave him for Christmas 2 winters ago. I sat with ease and crossed my right leg over the other. "Let's get down to it, boys," Father said. "Which one of you did it?" There was silence for for a moment. My brother and I exchanged a glance, not saying a word. "All right, if that's how you want to do it," he said, pulling back one of the desk drawers and withdrawing a Colt 1911 .45 semi-automatic pistol. He thumbed back the hammer and pointed at me. "Which one of you sons of bitches killed Jimmy Booker?" "Oh, you think I fucking did it, do ya?" I asked with a sneer. "Go on then, shoot me. Get it over with," I said, resting my hands along the armrests. In truth, I didn't give a shit one way or the other. I looked over at my brother, trying to read his expression, but he sat there with a calm that I'd only ever seen a few times before. For once, I was the loose cannon here. For once, I was the one losing my mouth, when what I needed to do was shut the fuck up. "Why don't you point the gun there?" I said, pointing at my brother. "He's always the one stirring up problems in this family. Put one right between his fucking eyes and let's get this thing over with." The sound of the gunshot was deafening. I flinched at the recoil and, to my amazement, realized that I'd still been alive. My eyes widened as a smile crept onto my face. I looked at Father. The gun had been pointed upward, and the muzzle drifted a thin line of smoke from the barrel up to the ceiling, where it mixed with the wafting cigar smoke. "Are you fucking crazy?" I asked, sitting forward. My foot dropped to the hardwood floor with a thud. "You know how many coppers walk these streets?" I asked, squinting at him. "I own the cops," Father said with a smile, and set the gun down atop the desk there, where it sat pointing between both of us, and not at one of us in particular. Father picked up his cigar and gently rounded the ash from the lit end, brought it to his lips where he bit down lightly, perching it along the corner of his teeth. "I'm gonna ask you both again. Which one of you did it?" he asked, drawing on the chewed bit of his cigar, with a wash of gray smoke drifting down from his parted lips. His wrinkled eyes studied us one by one. "Does it matter?" my brother chimed in. "That guy was a crook. Bookie or not, he's been stealing from us for years." "Not us," he said. "From me. And I know that he's been doing it. But what both of you don't know is that Jimmy Booker has been fixing bets for the better part of the last 2 decades. It was only a matter of time before we took the hammers to his kneecaps, but I would have let him live. You smug prick." Father leaned forward and stared at brother. "Scraps. That's what he took from me. Scraps. Like a dog. And one of you 2 numbskulls whacked him before I could set him down and get the truth out of him good and proper." Father sat back. "Besides, nobody gets snuffed out in this town without my saying so. Not even my dumb fuck, petulant rat children, prancing around like they're doing the Lord's work. Is that what you thought you were doing? The Lord's work?" He slammed his fist down along the top of the wooden desk, killing a man in broad daylight. 2 days before the race of the fucking century. He stood quickly, the chair behind him falling back as he towered over the desk in front of us. Do you two idiots have any idea how much fucking money I was going to make off of that race? 55 large, I said. I knew I'd seen the books. How much money did you take him for, anyway? Father asked, pressing his knuckles down along the top of the desk. How much money did you recover from Jimmy's safe? All of it, I said. How much? He asked again. His pupils were so large that you couldn't see the blues there anymore. Only the blackened coals for eyes where color had once been. We're wasting time, my brother said absently. He had begun running his fingers along the scar across the left temple beside his eye. He did this, of course, an old gambling tell of his, when he bluffed. We had another bookie lined up, south side, Giovanni's man. My father was stunned into silence. He turned and picked up his expensive leather chair and set it upright once more, collapsing into it. Let me get this straight. You killed my man so that you could use the Italians. Do you think because we have some truce with those Goombas, you can take out one of our own and fix bets with another organization? Looks like you boys are trying to run this family. Father rubbed his eyes, his cigar still perched in his teeth along the corner of his mouth. He breathed in deep, the cigar cherry lighting up the inside of his palm, and he pulled it from his lips, curling an index finger around it, wet and gnarled. His hand perched along the armrest, a thick line of smoke wafting from the end of the half-chewed cigar. You boys will be the death of me, he said with his eyes closed. He turned to look first at my brother and then at me. What gave you smartasses the bright idea to fix bets with the Italians? My brother glanced at me and then back to Father. Because it's our time to move on their territory. The Italians are weak. They lost 3 good men to bank robberies, another 2 to the bombing last month. My father's eyes glinted. Between the 3 of us, none of us saying the thing there beneath the surface. That father had been orchestrating the bombings. There had been dozens in the months past. He'd been killing off the Italians from whatever shadows that he'd been operating in, beneath the guise of a truce all this time. The bombs that had been planted, the coppers tipped off about the bank robberies, was only a fraction of the work that had been done. Explosives were planted in engine rooms, aboard steamers, docked in Boston Harbor. Prized fighters dying suddenly from arsenic. There was a level of depravity not spoken of within this room, and between the 3 of us, nobody had said a word. Why Jimmy? Father asked. Why in all of this did you take out my very own fucking bookie? I sat forward, an elbow cocked behind me along the armrest. Because Jimmy wasn't who you thought he was. I stared across the desk. My brother shifted beside me. Jimmy wasn't just fixing bets for you. He was fixing them for the Italians at the same time. He might have been taking crumbs from you over the years, but he's been raking it in hand over fist with the Italians for a decade or more. Jimmy is a distant cousin to the Giovanni syndicate, married to one of our very own. How do you know all this? Father asked, raising an eyebrow. You're not the only one who bribes cops, Brother said. There was laughter then. Father sat back against the leather chair and stared for a time at the ceiling, running his thick fingers through his thinning red hair. Word on the street is Jimmy's been letting bits and pieces of information slip past our lines for years. How do you think the Italians were able to take the South Side so quickly? Father, puzzled by this, shook his head and sat up once more. He centered himself behind the desk and laced his fingers. He seemed to know without knowing. What do you suppose we do about all of this? He asked, looking at me. I looked at my brother, who finally smiled. We know the name of their horse, Brother said. Consider it a parting gift from Jimmy. The next day had been one of the fairer ones of the season, almost pleasant. The sun was shining brilliantly overhead. I squinted through my tinted glasses, my cap tucked low over the eyes. I stood in the open air, smelling the vibrant scents of the women in attendance all around, their floral dresses puffed beneath the small of their waists like delicate flowers, concealing something even sweeter there beneath. My eyes moved across the sea of faces there, the onlookers waiting for the next race to begin, and with the gunshot that rang out, a few around were startled. But the next round of horses were padding down the track. Our horse wasn't among them, but was the next to follow. So I had little interest in this race, except for the equestrian appeal of horses galloping along their curved track, with each of their jockeys whipping their hindquarters in feverish gait. The crowd erupted into cheers and applause. The leader among them, a tan beauty with a red-jacketed jockey standing above and hunched over the bobbing head of the horse that he rode. They crossed the finish line, the crowd erupting into feverish applause. Ours is next, my brother said beside me. All was taken care of. I needn't bother with going over the morning's events, as I'd known well into the mid-afternoon what had transpired. Giovanni now lay along a cold slab downtown, the mortician sifting through the gunshot wounds that had been inflicted by the Tommy guns that took out their entire entourage as they approached their prize-winning horse, named Winn-Dixie. Our man inside had seen to poisoning Winn-Dixie with enough tranquilizers to kill a horse, to pun, but we'd be there to watch it as it happened. The horses had left the track. their riders collecting their wreaths of flowers before padding along the high walls to adoring and cheering fans. "You're certain it's been taken care of?" I asked, looking at him, my eyes trailing over the scar along the side of his face. "It's done," he said, without looking at me, feeling my eyes running along the course of that jagged line. I focused forward once more. "Father will be pleased," I said. There wasn't anything else to say. This was the first in many events moving forward. The decision that we were consciously making in a coup to take out our flesh and blood and run the organization the way that we saw fit. The world was moving right along beyond the cozy place that Father had built and remained. This was the world of the steam invention, industrialization, changing political landscapes, and even grander concepts that eluded Father. It seemed that in just an evening's pass, the world had left him there, a fossil amongst the living, and that no world would welcome his old ideals and aging perspective. I glanced at my brother now, not knowing how long he'd been staring at me. Both of us knew. "When this is all over, you'll take the north, and I'll take the south side," he said. I focused my attention on the track before us and nodded. I would take over my father's estate, and my brother would take control of the Italians. Boston was ours for the taking. There was a long pause between us, waiting for the next race to begin. A stir of excitement amongst the onlookers. And then the gunshot came. The gates opened. Our horse, Lil Red 1, roared past the others. But at the third gate, Winn-Dixie trotted forward in hopefulness, keeping a fair speed at first, before arching its head backward and falling onto the ground, with its back legs splayed as it rolled to its side, knocking its rider from its back. Everyone jumped to their feet and stood watching the downed rider, Winn-Dixie, writhing in pain, kicking its legs beneath it as it lay upon its side, bobbed its head as it scraped gently along the ground there. Everyone around murmuring with feverish anxiety. Winn-Dixie, panting, kicked its feet a few more times, stopped, heaved, and let out the last of its breath. Lil Red 1 crossed the finish line in first place, without the other riders knowing what had happened. I glanced at my brother. The crook of a small smile touched his lips. I looked back to Winn-Dixie, forgetting all about our own prized horse winning the race, and stared with wide eyes in horror at the fallen stud, with his rider knelt beside it. One small hand rested along the rib cage of the dead animal. "That settles it," Brother said. He turned to look at me, and I to him, finally, forcing my eyes from Winn-Dixie. "Pleasure doing business with you," he said, extending a hand. I shook it, feeling the embrace of my brother there amongst a crowded bandstand of race enthusiasts. For a moment, I felt the warmth of his hand, a subtle reminder of the man that he was, a handshake with someone that I loved, and then felt the cold and calculated business transaction that had just concluded. "Till we see each other again," I said. We parted there. He took his leave and mingled with the crowd beyond, making his way down the steps, rounded the corner, and was gone. That was the last time that I'd spoken to my brother aloud. Not long after the events of that day, my father had been fatally stabbed to death late one evening. Of course, this was part of the plan all along, though I had never been the one holding the knife. It was my brother, releasing us unto the splinters of this syndicate. It wasn't long before the fire started, as his men had been ordered to take out the Italians in force. The gunshots, for a time, had been frequent and unrelenting, often in broad daylight, but skirmishes clamored through the nights in those early days. Only rumors of these prominent Italian family members slain in cold blood, or that of the houses that had been burned in the early morning hours while they slept, cozied in their beds. My brother is always the benefactor, or presumed to have been. As I sat in Father's study, swirling a brandy, I'd not had the slightest care. My brother, unbeknownst to him, had been working for me all along, doing the dirty work with blood-stained hands, as the plans that I'd set into motion had finally come to pass. "Cheers," I said, raising a toast. Bread, tea, life. A steaming loaf of bread. For the last year, Marco, a UX designer by profession and a baker by hobby, has been fighting forgetfulness. Not sure how it started. Maybe there was a medical reason. He'd lay in bed thinking a tumor was cooking in the corner of his brain, slowly degenerating his memory, closer to a stroke with each day. He didn't even know if brain tumors and strokes had to do anything with one another. He just knew both were bad and didn't want to know more. Or maybe it was all due to alcohol and cigarettes in his younger years. He used to drink and smoke heavily until the bad habits caught up with him at his friend's wedding 3 years ago. He woke up with a hangover, but it was a different type of hangover. His head felt like a malfunctioned computer that worked at 50% of its capabilities. His mind would turn on and off as he was waiting for breakfast. Then, after a fourth time going to breakfast to douse his face in cold water, his brain turned on entirely. He could almost feel the full power of consciousness kicking in. The probability that it might not happen next time scared him, or maybe it was due to that tick bite he got 2 years ago. 2 weeks later, it turned out he had Lyme disease. It was discovered early, and he drank antibiotics. But you never know. Or maybe, actually most likely, it was because the sorry excuse for a human that was his wife was driving him crazy. Constantly nagging, never was everything fine, always something wrong. And it was him that needed fixing, never her. or if she needed fixing, it was because of something he had done, even when what he was doing was good. For example, back when he didn't have a sustainable income, life was bad because she was carrying the financial weight. Then, when the tables turned and he became the one bringing in the money, life was bad because she felt useless. Then, all the diseases. One day, it's breast cancer. Then it's leukemia, only to be suspicious of an unknown bone disease. Next, the mental issues, bipolarity, anxiety, panic attacks, depression. Marco had no problem with any of those. He was there to help. What ticked him off was the nerve to complain about his behavior when he had a bad week. It was understandable if she was in a rut, but God forgive if it was the other way around. Then he was a selfish and cold-blooded bastard. All of that was the reason for his panic attacks. Marco has never had them before as long as he could remember. Then he'd get sudden panic attacks while waiting for her to finish her shopping or while on a bus. It would happen out of the blue. He'd have a perfect day, then a sudden surge in the brain and panic. The result was panicking about a possible next panic attack. He couldn't remember if this was before or after his friend's wedding. It was a long time ago. Too many events to remember the exact time. Finally, the tea. The apartment was full of tea. Green tea, black tea, Earl Grey, matcha, chamomile, Desert Delight, 1001 Nights, the Gauss flights. All these general and random names. And okay, it was fine. Nothing wrong with someone enjoying tea. But she'd buy one. God knows it would be outside her budget, drink it once, and then leave it in the cupboard. Like a lunatic collector, but instead of LP records, it was tea. Anyways, Marco stopped for a second. What was he doing again? It was always like this. He'd be doing one thing, start thinking about her the next, get angry, and then forget about closing the fridge door. He looked at the still hot loaf of bread. He took the knife and cut into it. Steam was dancing from it and mixing with the kitchen. A perfect concoction of tasteless air and oven-fresh pleasantness. Then he looked at a small bottle next to it. Was he really going to poison her? What a crazy thought. He still couldn't believe how he managed to get his hands on the poison. The poison needed to have no flavor. He didn't want to jeopardize the bread, but could he do it? Now that the moment has arrived, could he kill? No. Could he kill another person? His wife, out of all people. He wasn't that type of person. The ones you read about in the news, they are always ugly, weird, and either too thin or too fat. He wasn't that. He liked people, and people liked him. Unlike the fat and the thin, he had a reason. She brought him to this point. He'd never do it for pleasure. His action was justifiable. He cut 2 pieces of bread and put them on a plate. He opened the fridge and took some ham and cheese. Next, he cut both ham, cheese, into fine finger food pieces and decorated them next to the bread. The fridge light helped him see better. He picked up the plate, took a deep breath, and walked towards the living room. He stopped. Wait. 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 Did he put the poison in the dough before baking the bread? He remembered pondering whether to lace the bread before or after. It made sense to do it before. But what if the heat neutralized the poison? Unlikely, but it could happen. He should have used more than a few drops. What's the worst that could happen if he didn't? He chuckled. She'd die even more? Huh. Snap out of it, Marco. Did you put the poison or not? He grabbed the bottle and brought it to his eye level. He jigged the small brown bottle to see if there was less poison than before. No idea. He pulled the cork and smelled the poison. No smell. What was he expecting? Damn fridge. Always forget to close it. Marco slammed the fridge door. What to do? What to do? Maybe he should roll with it. And if it works, it works. If not, he'll try again. No. That means he'd have to hide the poison somewhere in the apartment until the opportunity arrives. He couldn't live with the stress, not with all the cleaning she does every single day. Bake another bread? But what if she arrives while he's baking the second bread, and the first bread is already on the table? How would he explain that? His gaze stopped at the tea cupboard. He grabbed the chamomile, mint, lavender, rosemary, and clove mix, turned on the stove to boil water. 250 milliliters exactly. He shoved a teaspoon into the mix and combined it with water. Then he waited for 5 minutes. The tea was ready. Just don't forget. Lost hope. January 20th, 2025. Entry 1. It all happened so fast. All I could grab was my journal and a few pens. Alarms began blaring, and Dad rushed me. Mom and David down into a bunker? I don't know when we got a bunker or why, but it was deep under our house. It's spooky down here. One light source in the center of the room. Only 2 mattresses. And the rest of the space is full of ligatons and jugs of water. I'm not sure how long we're going to be down here, so I figured journaling would be fun. Though, no one's answering my questions. Dad looks more serious than usual. He's been checking his pocket watch since we got here. Mom hasn't stopped pacing around. And David the deadbeat sat right on a mattress when we got down here. I don't want to be the only kid down here, so hopefully it only lasts a few days. January 23rd, 2025. Entry 2. The alarms and sirens from above finally stopped today. They made it hard to sleep, but it wasn't like it was easy to sleep in the first place. The beds were made for a kid half my size, and me and Mom had to share, so it was cramped. I still don't know why we are down here, but it's looking like it's going to be a little longer than a few days. It smells down here. The hole we potty in is deep, but the smell still sneaks up and fills the room with stench. And I'm not a fan of the food. I preferred the terrible food we got from the middle school. Then these cans. I wonder what my friends are doing. I miss them. January 28th, 2025. Entry 3. I hear people above. They sound sick and like they need help. Bangs and booms, groaning and wheezing. These sounds echoing through the bunker. But Dad says we can't help them. But if they're outside, why are we trapped in here? Also, David keeps looking at me funny. I don't like it. It ruins our card games. February 1st, 2025. Entry 4. I would have been such a great weather girl. I was always jealous of the ladies on TV. They were so pretty. But I can always guess the weather in the bunker. A high chance of inhaling bodily fumes, followed by boredom for the entire day. Stay safe, folks. It looks like this has no mention of ending anytime soon. No time soon. February 3rd, 2025. Entry 5. I got curious. This bunker didn't just appear. Dad must have built it. And that means he knew something. Knew this was coming. Why didn't he warn us? He has a small leather journal. Keeps it tucked inside his blazer pocket. I know I shouldn't, but I need to see what's inside. February 7th, 2025. Entry 6. I started bleeding. I didn't know what to do. I just kept crying and crying. My mom was trying to comfort and explain what was happening, but I thought I was dying. It didn't help that David kept looking at the stain on my pants. I was so embarrassed. I hate him. I hate having to be around him, and he won't stop looking at me. I wish I could just vanish. February 8th, 2025. Entry 7. I stayed up while everyone was sleeping. Dad doesn't sleep with his blazer on, so I was able to grab the journal and look through it. None of it made sense, though. There were just symbols scribbled all through the journal. But I've seen him writing in it. Why draw these symbols? What does it mean? I also think David caught me snooping, because when I walked over to his and Dad's bed, he was shifting around. If he tells, I don't know what Dad will do. February 10th, 2025. Entry 8. David never said anything about the journal, so I think I'm in the clear. I'm becoming direly bored. David sits on his bed all day. Mom keeps replaying solitaire, and Dad is just checking his watch and journaling. No conversation is killing me. There's nothing new, no fresh air, and I never know if it's nighttime or not. If this is survival, is it even worth it? February 10th, 2025. Entry 9. I climbed to the top of the ladder to see if I could hear anything. I almost fell down because the ladder was old and the bars shifted. That fall could have been really bad. Most of the noises from above had stopped, and so it's just been silence. But when I pressed my ear to the hatch, I could feel vibrations, almost like a buzzing, like a wasp. There's still a world out there, I think. February 12th, 2025. Entry 9. I asked Dad about the buzzing, since now it's loud enough to be slightly heard from in the bunker. He, of course, didn't answer me, but he looked concerned by me asking. I couldn't take it. He had just stared at the hatch and then gave me his pocket watch. February. So much has happened. I lost my pens, so I couldn't write anything. It all feels so frozen. Nothing is moving anymore. Nothing's the same. My mind has run out of thoughts. The noises above are muffled. The only thing I feel is my heart bumping in my chest. Dad stopped checking his watch. He no longer writes anymore. I miss showering. My body is so dirty, even though I scrub so much. No matter how hard I try, the dirt won't come off. I catch my dad looking at the ceiling every day now. He's probably thinking what we both have been thinking this entire time. Is it safe to go up yet? He always looks scared whenever the thought crosses his mind. I can see it. His dread of what's to come. Why won't he tell me? Is it so terrible? Maybe I should find out for myself. It would be better than being in this casket. I'm tired of soup. I'm so tired. I want him to hug me. I want a hug so bad. It's been so long since I've been hugged. But I can't. I can't accept his comfort. It's hurting him to know he can't help me. A hug from Mom would've. She gave the best hugs. The buzzings never stopped before. So many continuous days with that buzzing in my ear. It's finally gone. Something changed. I have to take this chance. Dad would try to stop me if he knew. I have to do it now while he's asleep. I know you're reading this now, Dad. I love you. I wasn't strong enough. Forgive me. Paranoid delusions. The wind buffeted him wildly, and the rain hammered down relentlessly. He was walking near the local creek, which was connected to the suburb's storm water drains. But this particular area was just rocks, shrubs, trees, and water. Hastily, he made his way down to the muddy stream, which, at this time, was pitch black, and stepped into the water. This would be a sort of baptism. He descended into the water and dunked himself in it. It was too shallow to cover his entire body, so he splashed some water onto his head. Now he was ready for whatever this night held in store for him. As he ascended the side of the creek, he saw before him the well-trimmed grass soccer field. lit by down lights on the large steel poles surrounding it, and began to stagger in its direction. Soon, he was standing in the middle of the field, wet from the downpour. He felt alone. Not physically alone. There were cars going up and down the road next to the field. But as far as he knew, nobody knew he was out here. But strangely, he saw someone approaching in the light. It was a middle-aged man. Thunder boomed across the field. "What are you doing out here?" "Best to be truthful. I'm waiting for the world to end." "Have you come to join me?" Lightning lit up the sky. "Yes, I'm out here for the same reason." They both turned and looked at the houses, whose steel back fences met the side of the field. "Do you think we're the only ones who know?" The rain belted down on them both. "I think so." The thunder from the lightning rumbled heavy and hard as more great arcs lit up the sky, and the rain became heavier. The man looked at him through the gelatinous downpour. "How did you get here?" He replied in a frantic rush. "I've been walking through this night down many different paths. I honestly couldn't tell you how I got here. I just kept on walking. Eventually, I hit the creek over there, and then I came to this field." The wind battered them, causing the rain to hit them in an angular fashion, directly on their face. The man came up to him, soaking wet, and put a hand on his shoulder. "Tell me your name. We need to pass the time somehow." The rain began to subside, and the wind became calmer. He responded, "My name's Jack. Who are you anyway?" The man looked at the ground, his hand still on his shoulder. "I'm David. Tell me everything you know about why you're here. Tell me everything you know about the world ending." He sat down, and the man sat with him. "I left my car when the radio started sounding funny. Just got out and left it where it was. It wasn't just the radio. I felt like the car was going to lock me in any second. I walked and walked, and when I got to some shops, I heard people laughing at me, but I just ignored them and opened the Bible. I was sitting on a concrete barrier, and the pages just started to turn, slowly at first, but then faster and faster, till it stopped at the book of Revelation. Ah, the book of Revelation, the prophecy of the end times. But don't you think that maybe it was just the wind? Jack's face tightened, and his teeth gritted. "It was a sign. I know a sign when I see one." A loud thunder crack shook the earth. He began to pace back and forth, and then turned to face David, his voice trembling despite his efforts, words spilling out too fast, fingers twitching against the damp grass. "The end of the world is when God returns his Son, Jesus, back to the world to judge everyone. Everything great we have built, all the technology we have created, it won't make any difference. Everything will be destroyed to be remade again. All the wicked will be sent to hell, while those who believe will be given new bodies and will live forever with God. Jesus in their midst. I see, said David. I'm not going to debate your beliefs with you. I respect your choice. But tell me, what made you think it's happening right now? He began to pace again. It started as a feeling. I was feeling so amped up. And then I saw the pages turn on my Bible. And then this crazy storm started happening. And I've had this horrible feeling, like 1,000 people are watching me at once. If I close my eyes, I can almost see them looking at me. And then, when I was in my car, I heard people singing my name. I don't know why they were doing that. Maybe they want me to think I'm special. So I'll think I am the Messiah, but I'd be a false Messiah, so I can't let them control me, David replied softly. I can see there is a lot going on for you. Let's break this down. So, the storm made you feel more alert, more vigilant. The way you said it before, it was as if your feelings created the storm. But don't you think the storm might have been what, in your words, amped you up, and not the other way around? The wind became gentle. He continued, his voice calm and reassuring. And the feeling of being watched. This could be paranoia. Many people who become paranoid feel they are being watched. And when you heard people singing your name, are you sure that's what you heard? Do you think maybe you misheard? Or perhaps you're hallucinating? In any case, you left your car running in the middle of the road. I hope it hasn't been stolen. His shoulders slumped. The clouds were clearing, and a few stars were visible through the soccer field lights. Everything you're saying could be true, but if I can't trust my own feelings, how can I know anything? I'm a Christian. I believe God can talk to me. Is God deceiving me? Silence descended upon them, with only a faint breeze gusting back and forth. David smiled. Listen, I respect your beliefs, and I'm sure that there is something in those beliefs that allows for God to communicate with you in certain ways. But let me tell you something. He opened his wallet and pulled out a card. I am not actually here for the end of the world. I'm here to find you. I'm a psychologist in the public mental health care system. Your parents have reported you missing. And I'm here because your phone allowed us to track you. That might sound like a breach of privacy, but believe me, it's in your own interest. Right now, I believe you are mentally unwell, and I want to help you. Look at the both of us out here, soaked from head to toe. I need you to follow me over to my car so we can take you somewhere where we have medicine that can help calm you down. It's going to be hard at first. The medication isn't perfect, but if you keep taking it, you will get used to the side effects. And then things like this won't happen again. Hopefully. He looked down, wondering at everything he had just heard. How do I know you're telling the truth? How do I know you're going to take me somewhere and torture me? You know the world is filled with people who hate Christians. How do I know you're not a Satanist and part of a plan to make me lose my faith? Tears began to fall from his eyes. I believe that God can get me through anything. But honestly, I don't know if I could hold up under torture. The wind began to pick up again. David's face took on a look of empathy. All I can say is that I promise I'm here to help you. If God is going to communicate with you, it will help if you're thinking straight. And that's what we're going to try to do. Help you to be able to think without succumbing to delusions and paranoia. I've seen many cases like yours, and I really do feel for the people we treat. Will you come with me? He felt a sense of resignation. All right, I'll come with you. Though the ground was soaked, he could feel the firmness of the earth beneath his feet. The two of them walked off the field. The air was now completely still, and crickets could be heard chirping in the night air. Warm tea, but odd aftertaste. The overgrown azaleas, camellias, and kudzu-covered trees engulf my grandmother's old country house with its petite porch and large windows. Perfume from the spring garden swirls around in the late morning air. After knocking on the door, my Aunt Arlene opens it slowly, and the smell of fresh cinnamon rolls escapes from the faint teal door. By the looks of the house, Arlene has not kept up appearances, nor simple maintenance. The paint's peeling, boards broken on porch, and even shingles missing from the roof are major issues I calculate in my first 5 minutes here. My aunt inherits the house after Nan, my grandmother, who died under questionable circumstances. Come in, my sweet boy, Aunt Arlene says as she waves me in. I'm so glad you came. I haven't seen my Aunt Arlene since my father's service. She hardly spoke to anyone there, and her reasoning is it's her only bother, and losing him meant she is all alone now, even though I'm still here. It causes her such great pain she didn't even come to the reading of his will. For Christ's sakes, it was just me, for my mother passed away from breast cancer 3 years ago, and my grandparents died about 15 years ago. So I am the only other family she has. She shuffles across the vestibule towards the front sitting room. The morning sun bakes the overly stuffed room. Please have a seat, my dear. She motions towards a chair near a coffee table. Then she sits across from me on a satin love seat. Underneath the sugary sweet smell of rolls lies a stale, almost mildew stank that stings my nose. The coffee table has stacks of mail and smut novels, along with a sterling silver tray with tiny teacups, sugar dish, and dessert plates. Over the fireplace, cobwebs blanket the matching pair of candelabras, with a trail leading to dancing figurines, which are broken in this place and that. I'm sorry about your father, she says, while her jowls jiggle among a slit mouth. She brings up a handkerchief to the corner of her lips. Her head and hands shake a bit, as if she's strung up by marionette threads and the puppeteer isn't paying attention. I'm sorry as well. I know you and Dad were so close, I add. When I adjust my khakis pants, a loud pop comes from the chair cushion. So I gently lean back with my hands on my knees to avoid moving again, just waiting for the chair to cave in. Aunt Arlene straightens her lace collar on her well-pressed dress, like she didn't hear the my ass breaking the chair. You know your parents always wanted to give you a little sister, but I believe your mother only wanted a girl she could dress up in fancy little dresses. Arlene sighs. She tinkers her dainty gold watch on her wrist. It's so small, I doubt she could even read it. This place seems to have paused the minute my grandpap died. Even the grandfather clock in the corner, which keeps eternal hands at 10 and 2. I don't know how old my aunt is, but when I was little, I would pretend that she was like 110. She carries herself all hunched over, with gnarled hands that look like they don't even open anymore. The hair she keeps in perfect curls tight to her head, with the typical old lady hat adorning the top with the matching gloves. She is defiantly older than my father, by 20 years at least, because the endless griping over his birth. Aunt Arlene would have been an only child if it wasn't for him. Then, being a boy, my grandparents adore him and spoiled him to no end. When they became adults, he was given the family cattle ranch along with the larger homestead. But as I said before, they didn't completely write out Arlene. I just don't think they trusted her to manage the business. Her anger got the better of her one time, and she threatened my dad that she would get her share by any means. So how are things going? Good, I guess. I'm not sure I'm quite ready to take over the ranch, though, I said. Well, I can understand that. You're still so immature to have such a large responsibility over so many people and money, she says with tight lips. My eyes about popped out of my head, and how can she sit there staring at me as if that's not an insult? You know that I've graduated with a master's in agricultural sciences with a BS in business. And not only that, I've worked for Dad since I could walk. I've spent the last 3 years working on networking and research to increase production. I can feel my face boiling red, for Aunt Arlene knows all of this. She constantly interferes with my dad's decisions to include me in any of the family business. She clears her throat. It's one thing to wrangle calves down in front of a crowd to impress young farm girls. It's another to manage $1 million cattle ranch with trucks and employees. I'm still not sure why your father didn't place me on the executive committee. I mean, at least until you're old enough to make managerial decisions. The ranch hands don't even trust you yet. And some bits of paper isn't going to get you respect in this field. She claps her mouth shut. My chest tightens, and I feel like my head is about to explode all over this ugly antique rug. Deep breaths. Take deep breaths. I run my hands down my face and squeeze my eyes shut. My Aunt Arlene has always been like this, though. She believes we didn't run the ranch how Grandpap wanted, and he would be disappointed in my dad. I just want to tell her, then why the hell didn't he give you the ranch instead? The grudge she holds against my dad seems to have gone to the grave, which is a damn shame. Well, Arlene, my dad has already proven. Ringing came from the kitchen. She promptly stood up. I've baked us some goodies, my dear boy. She gave me the oddest smile. She locks her heavily wrinkled eyes to mine, which appear to be shiny, then smiles with every single tooth. Her stare sets into my soul, but breaks when a whistle from a kettle starts. As she turns to walk toward the door, she twirls on her toes, as if she is floating across the maple floor, and disappears. I hear clanking of china and spoons coming from the dark hallway. Then oven door opens and closes. Why don't you help me for a second? She bellows. As I get up from the chair, the spring bounces back into place with a crack. I shake my head. I'm not sure why I came. I wander down the damp hallway towards a swinging kitchen door that looks like a portal to another world. Here, she hands me a small carafe. Could you please add some milk to this? She plates the pan of hot rolls onto a floral china platter. Can you carry the milk and teapot for me? There's too much to juggle here. She turns and vanishes from the kitchen. I try to follow her, but my knuckles are burning just a bit from the side of hot teapot. So by the time I make it back to the sitting room, she is ready to hand me a place with a cinnamon roll on it. How do you like your tea? She asks. But before I can say, she starts humming Old Rugged Cross. I decide to change seats, for I am certain that the chair is on the edge of collapse. I like a little sugar. No milk, I answer, while dropping into the love seat. She clinks around the serving tray, mixing the teas. Here you go, my dear. She smiles again, passing me the cup and saucer. Is there a reason you asked me here? I'm kind of busy dealing with all this stuff with Dad, I said, while taking a sip of dark tea. It hit really strong and bitter, almost like eating soap. I couldn't help but to screw up my face and swallow hard. Well then, down the hatch, I held my breath and sucked the rest of the cup. I didn't think you could screw up tea, but there's always a first. So here's to the cinnamon rolls for being better. I hold it up as if I'm toasting my dad. The first bite proves it to be edible. Oh, no real reason. I just wanted to see my only nephew. Arlene answers with a blow and sip of tea. She takes a deep breath of tea in and continues to sip her tea. To my understanding, it's just the two of us now, no other relatives, she says. Is there a young lady in the picture? No, I say. Cough. Another bite. I put the teacup on the table. I'm not seeing anyone right now. You need more tea, she says. But before I could answer no, she snatches the cup and fills it with more and adds more sugar. Here I added more sugar to it. She hands the cup back, and I take a sip. Nope, just as bitter as before. Another cough. I made a new flavor of tea. It's a bit darker than my usual, but I didn't think it was that strong. Want me to add some milk? She reaches out for my cup again. I wave my hand to decline and chug the remaining. Cough. A pain in my stomach slams into my ribs, and the cinnamon roll tries to run up my throat. I'm not feeling too... But before I could get the words out, the world blurs, and my head feels like it's full of lead, and I feel my body slide down the love seat to the floor. Well, my darling nephew, I've grown tired of you and your father taking from me, and now I'm finally getting what is rightfully mine. I hope you enjoy your last meal. I really do think the oleander tea tastes better with some milk. Aunt Arlene's large smile fades to black. Where pirates came to die. A breath of wind slithered through the ruins and tumbled across his weathered face as he pressed the shard of limestone down the dry ashlar wall, leaving a new etched tally mark. It was a dimly lit chamber inside what was once the world's most notorious pirate prison. For him, it was a sanctuary, a place of refuge. Once the web developer for Shackleford Inc., in a city of skyscrapers, eclectic culture, and ultra-modern technology, Tom Malone scanned his Neanderthal calendar. 240 tallies made up the wall. Some were circled, and only he knew why. Gone were the titles of husband, employee, and neighbor. Given his isolated surroundings, the term castaway was more appropriate. A life filled with country club galas, company retreats, and exotic travel was lost. Survival had replaced living. Tom buttoned his slightly torn flannel shirt and grabbed his coat. He exited the chamber where the wrought iron door, rusted and bent, hung by a single hinge. He moved down the main corridor and stepped through a hollowed-out gap in the outer wall. The Rook, as it was called, was made up of 3 layers, undoubtedly to make escape near impossible for even the smartest buccaneer. If the legends were true, the Rook had seen the likes of Edward Davis and even Black Anthony. Zipping his coat, he trudged down the path to the beach. This was his routine every day. 2 laps around the island. The overcast sky produced a gloomy horizon, but that was normal for this time of year, or so he assumed. If the tallies were correct, it should be October. The sea was a gray mass of rippling currents. Tom breathed profoundly, absorbing the salty fragrance. The flow of the ambient tide took him back to simpler times when walking on a beach meant hunting for shark teeth, metal detecting for forgotten coins and jewelry, and collecting seashells that made their way into the guest bathroom. Such days seemed as far out of reach as the horizon. Suddenly, he spotted tracks. They snaked from the north before turning about just outside the rook's outer wall. He recognized the tread patterns as those of a Jeep Wrangler. Tom followed, occasionally glancing over his shoulder. When he reached the familiar bend on the beach, he heard the blast of a horn and dove behind a line of palm trees. Peering through the trunks, he noticed a docked ferry on the beach. A jeep was climbing the ramp onto the ferry. Personnel in neon-colored jackets moved about the deck. Another search party, he thought. A mustached man in uniform, wearing the same jacket, examined an area in the sand. He spoke into his radio before moving further inland. Tom's heart leapt into his throat when he caught sight of the woman following behind. She wore a yellow raincoat, and her arms were folded tightly as the sea breezes pushed ashore. Her curls flailed and whipped, no matter what direction she faced. She said something to her uniformed companion and advanced toward the tree line. "No," Tom muttered, before slipping back from the bend. He tried to quicken his pace, but the dry sand absorbed every step. Once back in the chamber, he dropped to the floor and focused on slowing his breathing. The acoustics had almost given him away during the initial search months earlier. His heart drummed, and his temporal pulse thumped. He caught his face in the mirror, fragment by the tally wall. It had belonged to the mirror in the cabin cruiser's bathroom before Tom dismantled the $1 million yacht upon his arrival. He gazed at the worn face and graying beard. Then there was the scar, where scalding grease once landed. "Tom!" came the woman's voice. He pressed against the chamber wall like a spy dodging a spotlight. "Mrs. Malone, we've searched the ruins before with no luck." He assumed this was the uniformed man. Tom felt his way down the chamber wall and gripped a loose stone. After a few careful tugs, it came out of its place. He reached into the cavity and pulled out the dust-covered Glock. "Tom!" Squeezing the seasoned grip, he inhaled deeply, closed his eyes, and exhaled. His mind traveled to the frost-covered day after his father was buried. Tom opened the gun cabinet and retrieved the pistol his father taught him to shoot with. "This will be yours someday," he would say at the range. Tom choked back the mist that wanted to erupt from his eyes. None of it matters now. Too much has happened. He took another lungful before pursing his lips and blowing out. He eyed the tallied wall and totaled the circled marks. 16. He suspected as much, but now he knew. One bullet remained. We need to call off the search. He called out, his voice nearer than before. That meant she was too. "No, he's here. I know it," came her distraught and shaking voice. Tom pressed harder to the wall. He hoped the ancient stone could absorb him and conceal any trace of a man desperate to remain in the shadows. "Ma'am, the weather is slowing us down, and the city cannot afford a stranded ferry with personnel on board. Would you stop if it was your... not if it meant putting others in danger." He ran his free hand over the scar. He traced the tight line of skin that ran from beneath his eye to the corner of his mouth. The sting had subsided long ago, but the hurt ran deep. "Please," she pleaded, "just let me look in here." The man radioed the ferry that he was making a final sweep of the old ruins, and that preparations for departure should begin immediately. For a moment, all was still. "Tom!" came the frantic echo. He slid his finger over the cold trigger. "Never again will you scar me, Maria," he whispered. A single shot rang from the remnants of a place where pirates came to die. Monochromatic. This story includes depictions of mental health and death. There is nothing graphic, but these topics are touched on. I had never been quite fond of Eve. As her psychiatric nurse, the buoy who kept her from drowning in an ocean of madness, I should have made an effort to respect my patient. I should have, and yet I couldn't. It was unbearable to deal with a soul so far gone, someone so dreadfully insane. Nonetheless, Evelyn Barrett was still mine to care for, my own burden. It was odd to dwell on the fact that someone so young, barely even 18 to be exact, could mentally fall down such a slippery slope. Eve was admitted to the sanitarium around 2 months ago, following her breakdown at school. According to her classmates, Eve had never been social. She tended to keep to herself when given the choice. And while this was not abnormal behavior for a teenage girl, it had always been different with Eve. Well, it had grown to become different. Students began reporting incidents involving Eve. They would hear her muttering to herself in class, her words unintelligible, but her whispers crazed. They would hear her sobbing in bathroom stalls. Her teachers noticed her grades slipping. Eve would write ominous messages on her papers, and she would draw horrific drawings in her notebook. Drawings of characters plucked straight from horror movies, monsters. Though her behavior was abnormal, Eve caused no problems. She remained silent, which was nothing out of the ordinary. She basked in the endless insanity of her paranoid, twisted mind. But at that time, no one was aware of how truly twisted it was. After months of containment, Eve suddenly exploded. She jumped up in the middle of class and shrieked, screaming bloody murder. Accounts of the story from her classmates explained that Eve screamed, "Leave me alone," dozens of times. According to the witnesses, Eve was not talking to a specific person, not one that anyone could see anyway. Her teachers restrained her and subdued her screams. Her behavior was, according to her classmates, purely and utterly horrifying, insane. And so, I was stuck with Evelyn Barrett. I tried to build connections with my patients, and usually, I was successful. Over my years as a nurse, I liked to think that my psychological support helped my patients heal. It did. There was no doubt about it. I did my job well until Eve came along. For some odd reason, I could not break through with Eve, break into her subconscious and heal her fragile mind. Whenever I tried to talk to her, she would do one of two things. Either she would completely block me out, or she would scream nonsense at me. In any case, neither method was beneficial in the slightest. The past 2 months had consisted of pointless therapy sessions and no progress whatsoever. I couldn't help but feel sorry for the poor girl. As I walked into my tidy office, I pushed out a sigh and slumped into my armchair. Eve was scheduled to meet with me at any second, and to be quite honest, I was dreading our session. Up until now, my day had been calm. My serenity was about to be interrupted simply by being in the presence of the crazed child. 3 knocks on the door was all it took. My spine straightened, and I felt the muscles in my neck tighten. My automatic physical response whenever Eve was near. The creaking of the door disturbed my therapeutic silence, and as I watched a caretaker escort Eve through the doorway, a queasy feeling began to form in my gut. Eve seemed on edge today, more on edge than normal. Her long cascade of honey blonde hair was ruffled, as though she couldn't be bothered to run a comb through it. Her face was a sickly shade of white. The shadows casted upon her face complemented the lack of life within her frozen, gray eyes. Eyes that hardly looked like eyes at all. She looked dreadful. The caretaker made sure that Eve settled comfortably on the couch before taking her leave. Nevertheless, Eve looked nothing but uncomfortable. She brought her knees to her chest and hugged them tightly, her body resembling something of a ball. Her hands shook while her feet tapped on the cushion over and over again. It was easy to assume that nerves had Eve in a chokehold. "How are you doing today, Eve?" I asked the girl, my voice visibly annoyed. I didn't care enough to put on a facade for her. Eve wasn't fond of me, as far as I could tell. It was obvious by the way her eyes ever so slightly cut into my face, as though they were 2 honed knives. Regardless, the feeling was mutual, and so treating one another this way had become routine. Usually when I asked her a question, Eve ignored it completely. I assumed she would simply ignore me by the way her gaze dug into my skin, and so I wasted no time before pulling out my notebook. Lazily, I jotted down a note. "Silence," I wrote. Nothing out of the ordinary, until I heard a raspy breath emerge from her mouth. "He's going to kill me soon," Eve muttered, her voice barely a whisper. I could hardly comprehend her words. Her empty eyes widened as her fingernails dug into her pants. The girl rocked back and forth in a crazed manner, almost as though she truly feared for her life. I, for one, believed that Eve was bananas, but as her nurse, I could not disregard such an alarming phrase. Who's going to kill you?" I asked, as calmly as possible. Though I knew that Eve was completely mad, I knew that she was. Her words still managed to send a chill through my bones. Eve disregarded my words for a moment, her mind unable to flee from whatever eternal nightmare it was trapped in. Her gaze remained on the ground and focused on anything but me. Seconds ticked by. Minutes. Finally, Eve's eyes snapped to mine, somehow more frantic than before. "He's taking over my life, the world around me, everything," she snapped loudly, her sharp words making me flinch. Her body recoiled after her outburst, and she scrunched back into her ball with a shaken expression on her face. "He's going to kill me soon," she repeated. "I just know it." With a sigh, I set my notebook aside and leaned forward. This wasn't the first time that Eve had acted up during a session, but this was the first time that she seemed so sure. So sure about the fact that something was bothering her. I said, "You are safe here, Eve. Nothing is going to kill you. This is all in your mind, okay? You're okay." "No, please, Debbie, I am not insane. This is real," Eve persisted. Hearing her say my name was odd. She had never addressed me before, and until now, I did not know that she even knew my name. He's out to get me. The Shadow Man. He's the Shadow Man?" I repeated incredulously. Despite Eve's urgency, I did not believe her words. Her crazed, perplexing words. She had never once opened up to me like this, and so I had no reason to believe that she was telling the truth now. Instead of dismissing her comment, I wanted to dig further. It was my job, after all. "Who is he?" Eve shuddered, as though a gust of icy wind had blown through the room. "I don't know." She paused abruptly and locked eyes with me. "But he takes things from me. He steals them." Despite my confusion, I played into her claim. "What does he take from you?" Eve blinked multiple times. "Color. Color? The color that I see. The color that she sees." "What does that mean, Eve?" I asked, and anxiety grasped my brain. Her answer, while strange, was also oddly specific. And something about that was off-putting. Color blindness. Was that what Eve was hinting at? Were colors fading from her vision? I took my assumption and rolled with it. Does your family have a history of color blindness? That sounded about right. Perhaps Eve was losing her sense of color, and she was freaking out about it. That wouldn't be anything out of the ordinary, but it was obviously nothing to go crazy about. No, it's not color blindness. He takes the color from me. She snapped again, her expression flushing with maroon fury. You're wrong. I am not crazy. You think I am, but I'm not. I'm not. Suddenly, Eve was on her feet, marching across the room to my desk. I sat up out of habit and hesitated. Eve seemed angry. Was she going to attack me? Grab for a weapon? I decided to take no chances, and I, too, rose to my feet. I turned to face Eve, only to find that she was inspecting various objects on my desk. Colored pens, Post-its, my computer. It's all black and white. Everything. She picked up a lime green Post-it and shook it in her hand. I can't tell what color this is. He stole it from me. It's gone. It's all gone. He's gonna kill me once everything is gone. Eve, calm down. No, I can't. Eve paused abruptly when her eyes fell upon a particular object on my desk. Her mouth gaped open as she snatched the object, inspecting it in awe. I almost reached for her arm and demanded for her to put the object down, but I restrained myself. Eve held the card that my daughter had made for me years ago. On the front of the card was a drawing of a rainbow, colored messily with crayon. My daughter had handcrafted the card when I fell terribly ill, and I believe that the card itself had cured me. I had kept it lying on my desk all these years, and the messy rainbow had been my constant reminder that color can supply us with life and wellness. And now, as Eve's shaky hands grasped the card, I fought the urge to snatch it from her. This card was precious to me. I couldn't risk her ruining it. It's colorful. She gasped in awe, her eyes absorbing the card as though its sparkles were emitting from it. I can see the rainbow. He hasn't stolen it from me. Suddenly, Eve's guard was up once again, and she clenched the card against her chest. I winced as the paper grew crinkled in her strong grasp. I need to keep this card with me. I can't let the Shadow Man steal it. It's all I have left. Protectively, I shook my head. My deranged patient could not be trusted with my precious card, my personal gift from my daughter. No, I don't think that's... Debbie, please, Eve urged. For one moment, the desperation in her voice made her sound sane. This is life or death. I am not insane. He is going to kill me. I can't let him steal the color from this. It's all I have. Please. Hesitance gripped me by the throat, and I opened my mouth to speak. Nothing came out. Eve stared me down, and her empty eyes were suddenly not empty anymore. They weren't lifeless. Instead, they seemed brighter, filled with life, with hope. I had never seen this side of Evelyn Barrett before. I stuttered. Nothing is going to happen to you, Eve. You don't need this card. But as I said these words, even I heard the doubt within my voice. I felt that I would regret keeping the card. Perhaps if I gave Eve the card to borrow, she would feel more at ease. Perhaps this card was the key to break through into Eve's mind. Perhaps she wasn't so far gone. Reluctantly, I backed away from the girl. Just keep it for now. That's fine, I sighed. Eve's eyes sparkled, and a hint of a smile pricked at her lips. She looked normal, as though she didn't live in a sanitarium. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, thank you, she repeated hastily. Just return it to me when you no longer need it. Of course. Eve's mannerism was completely different than it had been when she first arrived. As she continued inspecting the card in awe, I couldn't help but smile. Perhaps I could help her. Perhaps the Eve that I was not quite fond of was fading, and a new girl was coming to light. Either way, I felt the start of something new. Hope. The next day, I was scheduled to check up on Eve. The feeling of apprehension that usually sat in the pit of my stomach was gone. Ever since our session yesterday, I had faith that my patient was healing, truly healing. I walked with optimism, hopeful that my relationship with Eve was growing stronger. One of the best feelings as a therapist was knowing that you were of aid to your patient, that you were able to dig them out of a great hole. It felt rewarding, fulfilling. I approached Eve's door and knocked gently so as not to startle her. Though she was in the process of healing, she was still fragile. I waited for a few seconds before knocking again. Eve did not respond, and I heard no noise from inside the room. The queasy feeling in my stomach returned. I knocked louder. No response. To accompany my uneasiness, an alarm resonated through my skull. Something was wrong. Skeptically, I pushed open the door and took a quick glance around the room. It didn't take long for me to spot her. Eve. She was sprawled out on the ground, unconscious. Without hesitation, I crouched on the floor next to her, shaking her shoulder. Eve? Eve? I blurted. There was no response. She didn't move. No, Eve. Wake up. My chest felt light as I reached for Eve's delicate wrist. There was no pulse. In fact, her skin was a block of ice. Oh my God, Eve. Numbly, my eyes trailed over towards her hand. Her fingers limply held a little slip of paper with a rainbow on it. The card that my daughter made. The next few moments were a blur. My body began moving on its own, while my mind remained stuck on the image of Eve's body on the floor. Her still, pale body, as I unconsciously grabbed the card out of Eve's limp hand and shoved it in my pocket. I heard muffled voices entering the bedroom, scrambling around me, asking me what had happened. I didn't process the question, couldn't process it. All of my senses were honed in on Eve, on the fact that she was dead. Nurses surrounded Eve and I, and before I knew it, I was laying on the ground too, losing consciousness. I felt as though I was floating in outer space, and it became a struggle to breathe. My vision was fading into a deep darkness, and everyone near me was fading. The nurses, Eve, everything was fading. I was grasping onto nothing. But no, something was still there, hidden in the corner of my periphery. Though it blended within the darkness overtaking my mind, it wasn't completely hidden. I saw it. Him, though hardly visible, I was still able to make out the silhouette of a large man standing in the corner of the room. He hardly looked like a man at all, really. As far as I could tell, he had no hair, no face. He looked like an apparition by the way he blended into the wall behind him. He was the absence of everything, a void where light should have been. It was impossible to make out the distinct features of the man. But even with a blurry glimpse, I knew that the man was something of a sinister entity. Evil. As I blacked out, 2 words repeatedly rang in my head. They reverberated deeply, their consonants sounding of menacing death knells. It was all I heard as I lost consciousness. Shadow man, shadow man, shadow man. I woke up with a start on the couch in my office. My thoughts immediately trailed to what I last could remember. They trailed to Eve. She had died. Was that all a dream? What if it wasn't? What was the cause of her death? She was healthy, physically at least. Nothing made sense. The shadowed silhouette grazed my thoughts, and a chill fell over my body. I must have been imagining the man. I had not been in the right state of mind, nearly on the brink of passing out. It was an illusion. It had to be. So why was it that Eve had also been hallucinating a shadow man? A lump in my pocket alerted my senses, and I reached for whatever was inside. My fingers lifted out a piece of crinkled paper, scrunched up in a ball. The card. It was ruined, shoved in my pocket like a piece of trash. As my eyes welled up with tears, I unfolded the paper and examined the rainbow on the front. I blinked multiple times and wiped away the tears from my eyes. Something wasn't right. My vision was playing games with me. As I stared at the card, at the sloppy rainbow on the front, my heart dropped as I realized something. Eve wasn't crazy. The rainbow on the front of the card was no longer drawn in colorful crayon. It was purely black and white. The painted door for what feels like an eternity. I stare at the bloodied body without being able to move. It's sprawled at my feet, limbs flung wide open, limp, each arm and leg pointing in a different direction on the filthy cobblestone ground of the tiny, walled, dark, and abandoned courtyard. Above us, the moonlight and the sparks of stars flicker behind white clouds that slice through a deep blue sky, like ghost ships crossing distant, uncharted seas. The layers of mythical creatures and fearsome leviathans. With my free hand, I grope blindly at my own stomach, applying pressure to the wounds, the deep cuts that tore through flesh and muscles during the fight. Warm, dark blood gushes between my fingers, trickling down my arm, soaking the inner sleeve of my shirt and jacket. A lantern shines through the fogged glass of a third-floor window in the adjacent building. I run and hide, crouching behind a bush. Clenching my teeth, I stifle a groan. "Who's there?" demands the gruff, weathered voice of an old man. Through the tangle of leaves, cloaked in shadows, I watch him. He wears a long, white cotton nightgown and a matching cap. One hand holds the open window, while the other grips the lit lantern. He squints and scans the courtyard, fixing his gaze on the body. Hey, you degenerate drunkard. Go die somewhere else, Satan. Shoo. He yells like this for a minute or two, then grunts, mutters a curse, shuts the window, and disappears along with the light inside the room. I lift my head and look around, peering through one of the gaps in the ancient stone wall into the street. Seeing no one, I seize the opportunity to leave the scene. I rise, pull myself over the wall, and slip into the narrow, winding cobblestone streets. I try to move quickly, but quietly. I fail at both. The wound slows me down, saps my strength, the precision of my movements, and wherever I pass, I catch the attention of horses tied to posts or hitched to carriages, and dogs guarding gardens and courtyards. The former neigh and snort, the latter bark, bare their teeth, and growl behind fences, stone walls, or the iron bars of gates. The streets are deserted, except for the animals, silent save for their sounds, the gusts of wind, the rustling of leaves, the creak of hinges on lonely shop, and tavern signs swaying in the dim light. Of the lanterns hanging from sparsely spaced posts along the paths, only a few remain lit. I regret coming on foot, but at the same time, I know I had no choice. I couldn't risk having the coachman as a witness, and driving my own carriage alone would have raised too many suspicions. A rider draws far more attention than a man on foot. A man can move unnoticed, can hide at the first sign of danger, can leap over walls and slip through courtyards unseen, can climb walls and travel across rooftops. After a while, I stop feeling my legs, stop perceiving their movement. Despite my thick, fine clothes, I feel a terrible cold creeping up my spine, stabbing beneath my ribs, filling my chest and guts with dread. I collapse on my knees beside a wall and sit with my back against it in a dark alley, sheltered by shadows, trash, and foul smells. Just a minute, I think. I only need a minute if I allow myself 1 or 100. I can't say. But I wake startled when the clamor of sirens and bells reaches my ears. I've been discovered. They're after me. I bury the fingers of my free hand in the crevices of the wall, between the stones, and pull myself back onto my feet. I resume dragging myself forward, attempting to run. I stagger in zigzags, stumble and nearly fall, collide with posts, carriages, empty stakes, and walls, yet press on, one street at a time and one turn at a time, choosing the most crooked and darkest paths, cutting through back alleys, narrow lanes, and forgotten open courtyards. The dreadful symphony of the pursuit never seems far, but also doesn't gain on me as much as I fear. It follows me closely, always keeping the same distance, as if it were holding back for now. It is a macabre, inhuman sound, seemingly coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. I am about to turn a corner when I see the light, unlike any other I have ever encountered. It is not yellow or orange like the light of fire or lanterns. It is white, pulsating, alive, like sunlight itself. I stop, leaning against the wall of a building, mesmerized. The light crawls over the cobblestones like a living thing, formless and boundless. As it approaches, the colors of the lanterns, the animals, the stones, the ground, the walls, everything it is about to touch, fade away. It is as if the light is absorbing these colors, transforming objects into pencil sketches on white paper, like the ones I make before transferring my drawings in color to the canvases that I exchange for prestige, privilege, and fortune. Then the light swallows them, sucks up the colorless drafts as well, consumes them as if it were an immense, infinite mouth. The mouth of God, reclaiming into cosmic oblivion the living and the dead of this world. Behind the blinding curtain, the world disappears, ceasing to exist in a way that defies both physics and human intellect. Slowly, the light moves forward, a white void, smooth and shapeless, transforming what once was into nothingness. It is at that moment that the bells and sirens grow louder and closer, unbearably near. I look around and then start running again. I cross the intersection, with the light devouring the finite world to my right, and follow the street perpendicular to its advance. In a desperate attempt to lose my pursuers, I turn corners at random, sometimes left, sometimes right, zigzagging northward. My twists and turns are not always aimless. At times, I am forced to turn here and there, or backtrack when the wall of light appears just a few steps ahead of me, burning my eyes and rushing to envelop me. I shield my face behind my free hand and dive into the first available path to the right or left, or pivot on my heels and retrace my steps to the previous crossroads. Thus, I conquer the paved streets and the dirt roads, crossing the mile-long stretch that separates the town from my private hill and the mansion crowning it. I pass through the garden gates and rush to the front door. The guards and other staff still awake at this hour are startled, surrounding me, offering to help me walk, to carry me to a bed, a chair. They inquire about my injury, whether they should send a rider to fetch the physician from the village. I command them all to step back, to leave me alone, ordering that every door and window be sealed. For a brief moment, I work alongside them in this endeavor, but then I turn and make my way down the corridors to the bedroom. I kneel by the side of the massive canopy bed and touch Maria's warm face as she sleeps in peace and oblivion, undisturbed by the banging of doors, the shouted exchange of orders, or the music threatening to unravel my perfect world, the clamor of that million-strong chorus of sirens and bells. Gently, I wake her and help her to her feet. Quickly, my love, come with me. You must come with me, I whisper urgently, pulling her by the hand. She follows, trembling, crying, asking about all that blood, about the injuries, and the blood, the blood, the blood. So it was all over, then. Had I won? Were we finally free to live our love, no longer bound by escapes, lies, persecutions, or consequences? I pull her by the hand through the corridors to my studio. Along the way, I grab one of the lanterns hanging from rings fixed to the stone walls. I enter, pull her inside, and lock the door behind us. Frantically, I fly from one side of the room to the other, ensuring all other entrances and windows are shut as well. I move unsteadily, stumbling, pushing aside finished paintings, knocking over empty easels, unfinished canvases, and tables cluttered with papers, palettes, jars of paint, and brushes. Once convinced that every possible entry is sealed, I return to Maria, grasping her hand again, and lead her toward one of the walls. I scour the floor for a brush and a jar of paint. When I open the first jar, I find inside a solid, useless, gray lump. I hurry around the room, gathering more jars, only to find them equally futile. I try using the paint from the palettes, attempting to make it at least pliable with saliva. But to no avail, I find myself clutching a dry, useless brush, turning helplessly in place, sobbing, groaning in pain. Then I remember the wound, the blood. I return to the wall, grip, trembling, inconsolable and bewildered Maria's hand. Dip the brush into my own wound, pulling it out with bristles drenched in blood, dripping red. Together, we approach the wall, and I begin to work. The bells and sirens grow ever closer, unbearably close, now just outside the corridor, sounding in neighboring rooms. With desperate and vigorous strokes, I paint a door, a doorknob, our only escape route. In my mind, I paint on the other side the perfect world, the perfect life, the happy ending we deserve. I squeeze Maria's hand a little tighter. I let the brush slip from my sticky, blood-soaked fingers, falling with a muffled thud beneath the cacophony of sirens and bells. I close my eyes and take a deep breath. With my free hand, I reach toward the doorknob and grasp. Nothing. No, this can't be. I open my eyes and try again, this time keeping them wide open. Around us, the bells and sirens engulf the world, drowning out every other sound and voice. I try to scream, but no sound comes out. I look around, over my shoulder. From every corner of the studio, through the cracks in the windows and doors, the white, deadly light, that devouring force, seeps into the room. It stretches through gaps between boards and under the passages, swallowing colors, easels, brushes, canvases, and loose sheets of paper. I turn to Maria for one last embrace, but there is no time to know if the movement is completed or if the light is faster, extinguishing us before our farewell can come to fruition. I wake up with my head pounding, the bells and sirens exploding within my temples, and then the music begins to make sense. It sounds familiar, and I realize it is not composed of actual bells or sirens. Blindly, I stretch my arm to the side, fumbling for my phone on the nightstand, and turn off the alarm. I squint at the blinding white light of the sun streaming through the window of my small room, at the foot of my bed. Instinctively, still shrouded in the fog of dreams, I touch my stomach, searching for wounds, only to find it unscathed. Afterward, I get up, wait for the occupant of room 23 to finish their shower, take mine, get dressed, fill my travel mug with coffee in the kitchen on the ground floor of the pension, and rush to the bus stop a block away. Exactly at 7:45 a.m., I knock on the side door of the cafe where I work, located in the food court on the second floor of the Central Mall. William, the grumpy and bald manager, lets me in with a scowl and a grunt. I promptly put on my apron over my uniform, wear my cap, and take up my position. By 8 a.m., we are open and running full steam. At 8:17 a.m., Maria arrives. My sweet, small, slender, blonde, and gentle Maria with blue eyes. It's Thursday, and as usual, she is accompanied by her husband. He looks different in 21st century clothes, free of blood, with both eyes intact and without fatal gashes across his neck. They hold hands as they stand in line. At 8:22 a.m., they are in front of me, smiling and politely placing their order while they speak and smile, and I absent-mindedly jot down their requests. I see through the space between their bodies and heads, across the food court, into the art studio on the other side. At once, even from that distance, my eyes find the painting that captivated me 3 days ago. Among the dozens of canvases and easels displayed in the windows, a couple holding hands before a door painted on a wall. The man, clearly a celebrated artist from the 18th or 19th century, still clutching a brush wet with paint. And the door. That door. That door. And that freedom. And that door. And suddenly, they could go anywhere they wanted to, could love each other and be happy wherever they pleased, as much as their hearts desired, in any place they chose, and nothing else could follow them. Not through that door. Nothing beyond them would be able to cross it. Certainly, nothing bad or evil. I finish jotting down their order. We exchange pleasantries, and the couple turns their back on me. Maria turns her back on me, taking a seat at one of the tables with her husband. The two share a brief kiss, a tender smile. Clearing my throat, I call out in a loud and steady voice, "Next!" And the line moves, and life goes on around here. Do not step on the blue. Obsessions are insidious. They take root in the mind like a silent poison, creeping into every thought and distorting our perception of reality. They tug at us like an unseen current, pulling us away from the shore of reason, dragging us into dark waters where escape becomes a distant memory. Slowly, they drive us toward reckless decisions, choices that harm not only ourselves, but ripple outward, touching everyone we care about. Norman Sykes walked the coastal road, the sea stretching endlessly beside him. The soft murmur of the waves was a lullaby, hypnotic and soothing. As he passed a weathered sign, something stopped him. He took a few steps back, brushed a stray lock of hair from his eyes, and read it again. Do not step on the blue. That's odd. It usually says, do not step on the grass, he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. His gaze wandered instinctively toward the sea. Countless tangerine peels floated aimlessly on the surface, moving in lazy, slow circles. His breath caught. Then he woke with a jolt, his heart thudding violently in his chest. The same dream. Again, at 50, Norman had spent much of his life trapped in the clutches of obsession. He twisted door locks over and over, checking them again and again until certainty, that cruel illusion of control, settled in. There were mornings when he turned back mid-commute to ensure he hadn't left something behind, arriving late to work, to appointments, perpetually out of sync. But none of his compulsions held the weight of this fixation that had sprouted from a dream. It wasn't fear, it wasn't terror, but for reasons beyond his grasp. It consumed him. Without thinking, he began avoiding anything blue. His favorite navy suit, long tucked in the back of the closet, was now hidden away. The blue blankets he once loved were packed into storage. He even took down paintings that had a hint of blue, as if erasing the color would free him. But the dream did not relent. One evening, as he mentally catalogued every trace of blue still clinging to his life, his eyes fell on his reflection. And there they were, his deep, piercing blue eyes staring back at him. Once they had drawn people in, captivated them. Now they repulsed him. A few hours later, Norman walked out of the ophthalmologist's office, his new black contact lenses hiding his gaze. He then bought a pair of brown-tinted sunglasses to dull the sky's unrelenting blue. It helped. A little. Blue was fading from his waking world, but it still haunted his dreams. The nightmares continued, night after night. One day, exhaustion took hold of him. His legs trembled under the weight of sleepless nights. He found a bench at the edge of a park, collapsed onto it, and checked the time on his phone. He should have been at work hours ago. His eyes were sore, aching from lack of rest, from the black contact lenses that felt like foreign objects against his eyes, pressing into his very soul. He hadn't taken them out in days, and the constant pain was a reminder of the obsession that had consumed him. He had always believed control was the answer. If he could just manage his thoughts, his actions, he could maintain order. The faint echoes of his dream lingered. The blue, the tangerines, the sea. Strange, but familiar, all-consuming. He walked on, each step heavier than the last. Shops, people, the noise of the city. It all passed him by. He was lost, trapped inside his own thoughts, unable to escape. At a street corner, he saw a vendor with a cart piled high with tangerines. His chest tightened. The sight of them made his skin crawl. He couldn't breathe. Without thinking, he rushed forward, his foot swinging violently to kick the cart over. The tangerines spilled everywhere, rolling onto the street. He heard the vendor shout in anger, but Norman didn't care. He had to escape. Days bled into nights, and still he refused to sleep. It was the only way to avoid the chaos in his head. Then one morning, as he drove to work, exhaustion gnawed at him. His eyes burned, both from lack of sleep and the contact lenses that hadn't been removed in days. The pain was unbearable. He stopped at a red light, gripping the wheel, rubbing his aching eyes. Behind him, impatient horns blared. He assumed the light had turned green. Half blind, he pressed the gas pedal. His foot felt heavy, disconnected, as if it didn't belong to him. The world before him seemed to warp and bend, the street stretching out like a mirage. It happened too quickly for him to react. He never saw the van, brimming with tangerines, rounding the corner. Nor did he realize the honking wasn't for him. The driver of the van swerved violently, trying to avoid him. But it was too late. The collision was brutal. Norman didn't even have time to brace himself. The crash threw him back in his seat, the airbag bursting in his face with a deafening pop. His head rang, his vision blurred, but it didn't matter. His mind was elsewhere. Tangerines exploded onto the pavement, tumbling into the sea. They bobbed weightlessly on the water's surface, like fragments of his dream. Somehow real. A motorcycle became entangled in the crash. Its rider hurled onto the counter of a small paint shop. Norman barely registered the chaos around him. It was too much. A bucket of paint flew through the air, landing in the grassy park nearby, right beside a sign that Norman had passed countless times before. A sticker on the bucket read, "Blue." The sign split in two, crashing to the ground next to the bucket. A shattered reminder of everything Norman had been avoiding. It had never made sense before, but now it felt like an undeniable truth. Had anyone been there to read it, they would have seen the warning. Do not step on the blue. Neighbors. It's been so peaceful without tenants in Unit 37. Something about that apartment always attracts such surly people. Loud, rude, unneighborly. This used to be a community. Now it's more of a ghost inn. I liked going to the market first thing in the morning on Thursdays. That's when they deliver the fresh weekly stock, and all my favorite vendors know to save me their best batch. I didn't used to be able to afford this. Strange to think how now that I don't go to work, I am able to spend all this money. But life is in the little things. in plump figs, rich greens, and tomatoes that smell of being grown in sunny gardens. It's opportune that the school gave me paid leave, just like they did with the teachers. I thought they would send me to work in the next county while the school was renovated. I guess funding was improving. I cleaned up after dinner, freshened up, and went to bed. Or rather, the couch. I've gotten used to sleeping on it after long shifts, having to waitress for a while after work. Ends required meeting for a time, and I would just crash in the living room. Nowadays, it's more comfortable than ever, like a warm cocoon, ready to wrap me up, safe and sound each night. I finally slept like a baby. Then there was a bark, suddenly, in the middle of the night. Loud, sharp barking of a dog. It sounded so close, I thought he was right in the room with me. A cold chill ran throughout my body from how much it startled me. I felt my heart go cold. Must be what a surge of adrenaline feels like. I would have thought it would be a hot flash, but I felt frozen. Listening more carefully, I realized it was coming from Unit 37. I didn't see anybody move in. Why is there a dog? Am I hearing it wrong? Drowsiness was overtaking me again. Once my body realized it wasn't in imminent danger. Maybe it's for the best, I thought, and laid back down to sleep. It was a sunny August day. I've gone to feed the ducks at the park pond. It was only 10 a.m., but the heat was already scorching. Right at the entrance of my old, derelict-looking building, I've come across them. 2 strong men in white polo shirts, carrying boxes inside. Movers. I didn't speak to my neighbors. Or they didn't speak to me, really. It's useless being friendly to faceless people who look through you. Everyone has enough on their minds to care about anybody else if they can help it. So I don't know anybody here anymore, and I don't mind if it stays like that. At least there was no ruckus. Nobody made problems. I can live with that. As I climbed the stairs to my 4th floor, I saw that my assumption was right. There were a few empty units that anybody could be moving into. Of course, it had to be the Unit 37 right next to me. Then I heard it again. The piercing noise. Barking. Their door was open. The movers going in and out, diligently filling the space, I presume. And my mind seemed to fill just the same. Who were these people? Will the dog bark now, all the time, and disturb my peace? A young woman, maybe late 20s, with wavy brown hair appeared, with the dog on a leash, instructing the movers how she'll be back soon. She gave me a curt nod and swooshed beside me. All right, just the girl. Maybe she's a student, or just a young woman finding her feet on her own. If the dog keeps being loud, I'm sure she won't mind if I talk to her about it. It looked like a young dog. It could learn to behave. In the afternoon, everything changed. He came home, too. The boyfriend. I should have supposed that she had a boyfriend. She was young and beautiful. Why wouldn't she? Why he had to be insufferable that I had no answer to. Days that followed passed in turmoil. I am aware it sounds like an exaggeration. They had the right to move in there. They had the right to make life noises, to be. I was the one who had to endure it. I heard every step, every clink of the silverware, every bathroom visit, the TV, and the bedroom, and most of all, the arguments. I had the urge to go to the hardware store and ask to have my walls insulated. I think I could even afford it, but I kept thinking it would be too extreme. They were just a messy young couple. Nobody is perfect. I just wish I didn't have to witness it. On top of everything, it was the dog. If it wasn't for the dog, I think I could have gotten used to the other noises. But the damn animal barked all day and all night. Not all the time, obviously. Just enough to constantly remind you he was there. That they were there. What bothered me the most is that nobody seemed to care at all. As if nobody else in the entire 5-story building with over 30 units could hear him, except me. Did nobody else wake up at 3 a.m. each night when the damn thing shouted? That's how it sounded like, as if he was shouting at someone. Sometimes I had a feeling he was angry at the boyfriend, which is when I sympathized with the animal a bit. I, too, sometimes want to bark at the vile man, but who was he mad at in the middle of the night? When he barked at those times, it felt like he was angry at me, and I hated him for it. It was a Thursday. I have just gotten back from my farmer's market stroll. I never knew when they'd be home. They didn't seem to work a normal job. They'd be home at odd hours, and then gone at even stranger ones. Did they even work at all? Who paid for everything? They never seemed to argue about money. I could hear shouting from the corridors, climbing the stairs. The smell of weed was forever permeating the inside of the building. I detested the smell, but it was simply one more thing I just had to accept and learn to live with since they moved in. I've called the police 12 times in total so far. Loud music, partying, drugs, the dog. The police would come. They would get quiet and not answer the door. The police would leave. That was the extent of the law protection this country provided. Not that I put my faith in them. It was simply the only thing I could do. I tried ringing them, hoping to talk. He would curse at me through the door, and I would run back to my apartment. It was cowardly. At least that's how I felt when I did it. I just don't know what else to do. My entire existence was upended by them. They consumed me. My every waking moment, they made me think of themselves. They woke me up to remind me they were there. I had no escape, no peace, and there's always the dog. Sometimes I think he must feel the same way I do. He too is trapped with them. He can't leave. He can't even pee if they don't feel like getting up and taking him outside. One time, I heard the boyfriend hit him. He must have done his business inside. I pitied him, and I hated him all the same. Today, the dial got turned up a notch. Maybe the pot of gold they've been living off of had run dry. Maybe she cheated. Maybe he had built enough frustration to take it out on her as well. Plates were shattering as I quickly unlocked my door. I dumped my things in the kitchen and, without thinking, on instinct, went to call the police. That's what I was hurrying to do, without even realizing. As it was ringing, I could hear her cry and beg him to stop. Stuff was flying, hitting walls and probably hitting her too. 911, what's your emergency? Yes? Hello? I'm calling about my neighbors. Ah, Ms. Mizzero. Is it the dog again? Excuse me? You are Miss Mizzero at Fair Corner 11, correct? Yes, I have you on record here. You have issues with your neighbors. So I only asked if it was the dog again. Isn't that neat? No, it is not the dog. Well, it's the human dog, that bastard of hers. He's beating her. I can hear it through the wall. He's hurting her. There's stuff flying all right, ma'am. We'll send someone over to check on the situation. There is nothing to check. You need to hurry. He's hurting her. He could kill her. Do you hear me? Yes, ma'am. I've already told you. I've sent someone over. Just sit tight and try not to worry. He hung up the phone. Besides a few doors opening to snoop and promptly closing when their suspicions were confirmed, nobody did anything. He continued to scream and hit her. She continued to sob and mumble. Was she explaining herself? Begging? Soothing him? I couldn't tell. Not by her words, at least. I just knew. I didn't even realize I'd been sitting at my dining table, clutching the phone, listening, that 3 hours went by. I got startled from my stupor by the doorbell outside, and I glanced at the clock, noticing the time. That's how long it took them. They were at their door. I wonder what they'll do if he doesn't open the door. Will they just walk away like they did all the other times? The lock clicked a few times, and I could hear her voice. I knew it to be hoarse, but to a stranger, she sounded normal, chirpy even. Sorry to bother you, miss. We had a complaint from a neighbor. They heard some shouting. It seemed like they were worried for your safety. Is everything all right? Really? Oh my. Well, I'm fine. I don't know what it could be. Oh my God. Yes. Oh no. I feel so bad. It's probably the dog. My boyfriend came home. He was away for a few days, and Loki got a little too excited. He's been jumping all over the place. So the dog was making the noise Yes. Oh my God. Yes. I just remembered. He knocked over this vase right when Danny came home. Right, babe? Danny. I've never heard his name before. Doesn't suit him. He looked more like a Brad. Or Kyle. Hello? I thought it was the takeout. What's happening? I heard him ask the officer. We're just here to make sure everyone is all right here. There were some noise complaints. Oh my God, again? Some people really don't have a life of their own, do they? They all chuckled. The cop. Danny. The girl that was sobbing all afternoon. All laughing. At me. Well, I can see there's no problem here. Just try to keep the noise down at night. And don't let us spoil your afternoon. Have a good one, guys. She lied. What hurt the most was the familiarity of it. I remember lying, too. It seemed that, to the world, my lies were more believable than the truth. She was reminding me, I'm not the only one. They seemed to be more quiet after that. He left and came back late. She only went out briefly to walk the dog. The next day, I woke up with the intense urge to go to the park. I needed to see the pond. I dreamt of the water, the peaceful green vastness. My ducks. Do they remember me? I bet they would like anybody who brings seeds and lettuce, not just bread. I had to go to them. Gathering my things, I went to leave, locking up my door. She just got out too, at the same time. Our eyes locked. She looked swiftly away, but not soon enough. I saw the bruise covered by a thick layer of foundation. It was so ridiculously obvious, it made me think, did people really not see? Or did the covering up signal to them, it's okay, I want you to not care. I want you to not ask me about it. Look away. I couldn't look away, because I now knew. I was sure that cop knew too. Hello? Oh, hi, she answered reluctantly. Off for a walk? Yes. Sorry, by the way. Loki barks at night. I know. I can't get him to be quiet. He notices the pigeons sleeping on the ledges of windows and goes bonkers. Yes, we can talk about the dog, but we can't talk about the man. I'm going to the pond. I feed the ducks sometimes. Would you like to come with me? Oh, that's so sweet. But no, sadly, as I said, Loki only sees birds as snacks. She looked like a girl when she smiled. I see. I could come to tea later. If you're not busy, I'd be delighted. I remembered I had no tea at home. So instead of the pond, I went to the store to get some. The ducks can wait. I made them no promises. I sat around anxiously, waiting for her. Will we be honest? Will she even show? The doorbell rang. We sat, sipping my new rose and hibiscus tea. She chatted about looking for work. She had a degree in economics, a very male-dominated field. She didn't have any girlfriends. She was isolated. So much so, I gathered, that the loneliness made her befriend her strange, middle-aged neighbor who called the police on her all the time. So, Your boyfriend works then? I pried. No, actually. He didn't go to school, so he has some savings from a previous job. We decided to live off of those while I look for a good job. We're thinking maybe when we have a family, I could then stay home and he would go back to work. That way, we both have some free time. You expect to have free time when you have a baby? I blurted. I shouldn't rock the boat. There was another, more pressing matter I wanted her to hear from me. I guess you're right. I hadn't thought of it that way. Well, however it ends up being, we're both unemployed for now. Why isn't he looking for a job, then? Same as you. I told you. He wants to have some free time while he can, to find himself. He did work his butt off for 4 years, you know. He earned it. Do you think he earned the right to do that too? She instinctively covered up her cheek with her hand. You see it? Anyone with a pair of eyes can see it. He's not always like that, you know. He's actually really loving. And funny. He hits you. She paused. Yes, you know you need to leave him. I can't. He pays the rent. You'll find a job. You don't need him. I can't. I held her hand in mine. She jolted at my touch, yanking her hand away, with tears in her eyes, looking almost scared. I'm sorry. I don't mean to upset you. She just stared at me with a strange expression. I know I shouldn't be saying things like that. You don't know me, and you don't need advice from a woman you just met. Why are your hands so cold? It's so warm in here. My hands? I was perplexed by her question. That's what she's focusing on now? The temperature of my hands? The souk stared to bark from the inside of her apartment. She sighed. I should go. I think I even left the window open. One of these days, he'll actually catch a pigeon or something. Our discussion now completely deflected to unimportant matters. Once again, I had to let it go. All right. Tell Loki I said he needs to be a good boy. I will. The boyfriend must have come home, and the dog got out of their apartment. Before he could catch him, he ran inside my own as she went to leave. Loki, come back. They both went after him. Loki made a straight line for the door of my bedroom, barking insistently and pawing at the doorknob. They almost dragged him away when he made the final jump, opened it, and nosed his way in. He barked and barked and barked. I felt like it lasted for hours. I just kept watching the two, standing at the wide open double door, not turning to me, not calming down the dog. They just stood and stared. I walked slowly closer, with each step being more certain of what I'll find. Peace overcame me. Relief. Joy. I cackled. Full chest, lungs, and heart cackle. It was real. It was. It happened. I did it. They jolted at the sudden noise, finally turning to me. What did you do? She stuttered. The two blackened, withered figures could be seen on the once pristine bed. The one on the right wore my favorite outfit, my green dress, and my mother's dragonfly brooch. Loki, no doubt, found his kindred, too, by the closet. I did what I had to do. Finally, for a time, I got to be free. Tears escaped her eyes. "I'm so glad I got to meet you in the end," I told her. "I took my bag. I prepared earlier this morning. Take care." I smiled. "I think I'll go to the pond now." "Yes, I'd like that. Bloodlines." The first time I noticed something was off. I was 13. It was a school night, and I got out of bed late in the night to sneak a soda from the fridge. The house was silent, except for the low hum of the television in the living room. It was unusual for anyone to be up this late. My dad sat in his chair with the light off, watching the late news. The headline at the bottom read, "The Nightshade Killer Strikes Again. 15 victims confirmed." I watched silently for a moment while the reporter talked about a lack of clues and how the police seemed to be baffled. I remember the way my father's lip twitched as he sipped his whiskey, almost like a smirk. He noticed me standing in the doorway, and in a blink, his expression softened, becoming familiar and warm. "Hey, champ, can't sleep?" he asked as he muted the TV and rose from his seat. I told myself I had imagined the smirk. I must have. The encounter stirred memories of hearing my dad coming and going at late hours. How closed off he could be at times, and how he would sidestep Mom's questions of where he was going and who he was with when they fought behind closed doors, thinking I couldn't hear. He was hiding something. A few weeks later, they had a huge fight. Mom accused Dad of having an affair, which he denied. Mom and I ended up leaving for a few months that summer to stay with my grandparents. Dad eventually convinced Mom he was not having any affairs, that his problem was with gambling, and he was getting help. I'm not sure if Mom totally believed him, but we did move back home, and things did seem to get better. The late-night outings stopped, and the tension at home faded with time. Eventually, the memory faded too. The killings had stopped, and the Nightshade Killer became an urban legend, the subject of true crime, podcasts, and late-night horror stories kids told at sleepovers and on camping trips. The police moved the case onto the cold pile, and most thought he had died or been locked up for some other crime. Then, when I was in my late 20s, they found another body. The same victim type, the same ritualistic markings, and the same precision. The Nightshade Killer was back. That night, I visited my dad for dinner. As soon as I stepped into the house, I noticed something was off. The house seemed cleaner than usual. I could smell bleach in the air, thick enough to sting my nose. My dad was his usual self, calm and collected, always in control. He explained the smell away as a laundry mishap. He was still not used to doing it after Mom passed last year. During dinner, we talked mostly about me. Dad wanted all the details of how my life was going, all that I was willing to provide anyway. He asked about my work, life in general, and if I was seeing anyone yet. That is when I saw it. A faint red stain on the cuff of his sleeve. I got a good look as he poured a glass of whiskey for himself. The sight stirred something in the back of my mind that kept me up that night. That stain wasn't wine. It wasn't ketchup. It was blood. I knew it was. I remember the smirk. I needed proof. Real proof. The next day, I used my spare key to let myself in while Dad was out. My hands shook and felt more nervous than I expected. Not at the prospect of getting caught, but of the possibility of what I might find. The smell of bleach wasn't as strong, but it was accompanied by something else now. Something almost metallic. I made my way through the house systematically until I got to the basement door. It was locked. I don't remember the basement ever being locked. Using a bobby pin and a skill I picked up as a rebellious teenager, I clumsily picked the lock. The metallic smell hit me as the door opened. My stomach twisted as I descended the stairs, and the fluorescent light flickered to life overhead. The air was damp and cool, and as I reached the bottom and turned the corner, I saw them, trophies. Photographs of women with terrified looks on their faces, and a date written on each one, neatly arranged on a workbench. Next to them, a stack of old newspaper clippings dating back to the first nightshade killings. In the far corner, a freezer with a padlock and a collection of knives laid out across the top, looking freshly cleaned. I didn't need to open the freezer. I already knew what I would find. A creak on the stairs made my blood run cold. "You shouldn't have come down here, champ." I turned slowly as Dad came around the stairs. His hands in his pockets, he watched me for a moment. His face showed no sign of fear at being found out, or anger that I had intruded. It was something more like patience, like he had been waiting for this moment my whole life. "It was you the entire time?" My voice barely worked. I wanted to run and to throw up, but I couldn't move from that spot. Some sick part of me, something twisted and wretched in my blood, had to hear the word. I needed to hear him say them. "You killed them all?" "Yes." No hesitation, no remorse, just calm and collected as always, and merely stating a fact. "And now you have a choice to make." At that moment, I felt the weight of generations pressing down on me. My mouth went dry as I tried to swallow. I wasn't sure if I was afraid of him or of how much of him was in me. I felt my lip twitch almost involuntarily. Maybe I was afraid of the choice I already knew I would make. So today's story has come to an end. Or perhaps it never really ended. There are mysteries still there, questions still unanswered, and sometimes things that seem to only exist in stories can creep into reality in unexpected ways. Are you sure that when you turn off the sound, everything around you will still be normal as before? Or is there something watching you? Either way, always remember that these are just stories, or at least we want to believe that they are. If you like moments of suspense, tension, and breathlessness, don't forget to follow me so you don't miss the next stories. And next time, when you come back, make sure you are ready, because what awaits you may be even scarier than you thought. See you again if you still have the courage to continue listening.